Giant Lycan King agreed to an arranged marriage, one glimpse under the veil, and he froze its hue. Within the towering stone walls, the air was thick with expectation. The halls were alive with the quiet murmur of courtiers, the rustle of silk, and the distant echo of armored guards patrolling the corridors. Outside, the forest whispered in the wind, carrying secrets older than the kingdom itself. Kalen, the giant Lycan king, stood at the top of the grand staircase, his massive frame shadowing the marble steps. Even among his court, he was a figure of legend, a creature whose presence could silence a hall with a single glance. His eyes, golden and fierce, held the weight of centuries, and yet tonight they were restless, troubled. The council had made their decision weeks ago. An arranged marriage was the only way to secure peace with the neighboring human kingdoms. Kalen had agreed reluctantly, knowing it was not his desire but his duty. He had never sought companionship among humans, never allowed anyone close enough to see beyond his fearsome exterior. And yet, tonight, someone would come to the palace under a veil, a woman who would become his bride in name, if not in heart. Kalen's claws tapped softly against the stone as he waited in the great hall, the silence broken only by the faint rustle of a torch's flame. He had no fear of the marriage itself. He had faced monsters, armies, and the wild forces of the cursed forest. No, what unsettled him was something far older, far deeper, buried in a memory he had long tried to forget. The doors at the end of the hall opened, and a hush fell over the assembled nobles. A figure appeared, moving gracefully beneath a delicate veil that shimmered in the torchlight. The woman's steps were light, yet each one carried a presence that made the air tremble around her. She approached the dais, and Kalen's golden eyes followed her every movement. For a heartbeat, nothing stirred. Then the world seemed to shift. Kalen froze, not because of the veil, not because of the ceremony, but because beneath the thin, silken fabric he saw her. It was Lyra. His chest tightened and a memory struck him like a blade. Years ago, in another life, in another time when war had scarred the lands and promises had been broken, she had been there. They had laughed together beneath the silver light of the same moon, shared whispered words and fleeting moments of joy that had ended in heartbreak. She had vanished, believed lost forever, leaving only the ache of what might have been. And now, here she was, standing before him, veiled as though fate herself wished to test him. Lyra's heart pounded as she approached. She had been given strict orders, conceal her identity until the right moment. But she felt a pull she did not understand, a magnetic force drawing her toward the king. His presence was overwhelming, filling the room with power and command, yet she sensed something else beneath it, a vulnerability, a shadow of the man he had once been. As she reached the dais, the room seemed to shrink around them. Kalen descended the steps with a slow, deliberate grace, his gaze fixed on her. He did not speak immediately. Words felt inadequate, incapable of expressing the storm of recognition, the surge of longing and pain that had risen in him the moment he saw her. The high priest cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "King Kalen," he said, voice steady, "this is your bride, sent by the house of Alara to seal the pact of peace." Kalen's jaw tightened, and he inclined his head slightly. "I see," he murmured, his voice low, resonant, carrying an undertone that made the courtiers shiver. Lyra bowed as etiquette demanded, but her eyes met his for the briefest moment, and in that glance, centuries of unspoken words passed between them. Kalen's fingers itched to reach out, to brush the veil aside, to confirm what his heart already knew, but he restrained himself. He was a king first, a Lycan of fearsome power, and he could not allow sentiment to override duty. The ceremony proceeded. Lyra repeated the formal words of assent, and Kalen responded with the expected authority, yet neither truly heard the words. Their eyes remained locked, each reading the other in silence, each feeling the pull of a bond neither could deny. After the formalities, the bride was escorted to her quarters. The court retreated, leaving Kalen alone in the moonlit hall. He paced, a storm of emotion raging within him. Anger, regret, longing, and desire collided. He had promised himself he would never feel this again. And yet here she was, and with her came memories he had thought were ashes. Hours later, the night deepened, and the palace grew quieter. Kalen walked along the balcony overlooking the forest, the wind tugging at his dark cloak. The moonlight reflected off his golden eyes, making them glow with a feral intensity. He could hear the rustle of the trees, the whispers of the forest, and yet all he could think about was her. Lyra, in her chamber, sat by the window, staring at the same moon. She traced the patterns of the silver light with her fingers, thinking of the man who had frozen at the sight of her. Something in her stirred, an instinct, a memory of someone she had trusted, someone she had once known as more than a king. She felt the same pull, the same ache. And she knew that the path before them would be neither simple nor safe. The next morning brought a new tension. Courtiers whispered of Kalen's unusual behavior, noting the intensity with which he regarded his bride. The king, usually reserved and imperious, moved with a restless energy. Lyra, aware of the scrutiny, wondered whether he suspected who she truly was, or if the veil had kept her hidden even from his piercing gaze. That evening the full moon rose, casting long silver shadows across the palace. Kalen, unable to quell the turmoil within, found himself drawn to the garden, a secluded place where moonlight touched every leaf and stone. There he waited, silent, his form blending with the shadows. Lyra, sensing an unspoken invitation, walked into the garden, her steps careful, quiet. When she saw him, standing like a statue among the silver leaves, she stopped. "You," she began, but the words caught in her throat. He turned toward her, and in his gaze she saw everything: recognition, longing, the ache of years lost. Kalen took a step forward. "Lyra," he said, his voice a low rumble, "I never thought I would see you again." Her heart raced. I thought you were gone." He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. "No, the world is cruel, but it cannot erase what is bound by fate." They stood there, the night around them deep and quiet, yet filled with the unspoken tension of everything that had passed between them and all that remained unresolved. The wind carried a whisper, as if the forest itself held its breath. Kalen extended a hand, cautious yet yearning. Lyra's fingers brushed his, and in that contact memories and desires collided, fierce and tender. But just as the connection deepened, a shadow moved at the edge of the garden, a figure watching, hidden. The peace they had found in the moonlight was not absolute. Danger lingered, waiting to strike. Kalen's eyes narrowed, golden with warning. "We are not alone," he said, his voice carrying both command and protection. Lyra felt a shiver run through her. The world they had returned to was not the one they had once known. Old alliances, new threats, and the power that bound Kalen to the curse of his bloodline would challenge them. And yet in that moment, under the silver light of the moon, they found a fragile connection, a spark that refused to be extinguished. The night stretched on, the wind rustling the leaves, the distant howl of a wolf echoing through the forest. And as they stood together, hand in hand, they knew that the journey ahead would test them in ways neither had imagined. Their reunion was only the beginning. The first chapter of their story had been written under the moonlight, but the shadows that lingered promised that their trials had only just begun. Kalen's gaze lingered on Lyra's veiled face, a silent vow forming in his mind. Whatever storms awaited, he would protect her. Whatever darkness threatened their world, he would face it. And whatever the past had tried to take from them, the future, if fate allowed, would belong to them together. And so, the Lycan king and his veiled bride stood beneath the moon, bound by memory, longing, and the unspoken promise of what could be, unaware that destiny was already weaving its next cruel, yet beautiful thread. The palace of Navarra had grown quiet, but the weight of the previous night lingered in its stone halls. Moonlight still spilled through the high windows, painting the walls in silver. Kalen, the giant Lycan king, remained restless. The memory of Lyra beneath her veil haunted him, stirring emotions he had long buried. His throne, vast and imposing, seemed hollow tonight, as if even its grandeur could not fill the ache inside him. Kalen paced the grand hall. His massive footsteps echoed against the marble, yet he moved with surprising grace for one of his size. His golden eyes were sharp, alert, and troubled. Every shadow seemed to whisper secrets he could not ignore. The court had tried to resume its normal routines, but Kalen's unusual stillness unsettled them. Even the guards sensed it. Their king, the unstoppable giant Lycan, had been shaken. In the heart of the palace, Lyra sat by a high window in her chamber. The veil had been removed now, but only from her face. Her identity remained carefully concealed from those who might recognize her. She traced the patterns of the moonlight on the stone floor, her mind replaying the moment she had seen Kaelin's eyes, those golden eyes that had frozen on her as though recognizing a lost treasure. Her heart was heavy with longing, yet caution restrained her. She had learned long ago that power and desire were dangerous companions. Kaelin could not sleep. His curse, the bloodline that tied him to the full moon, throbbed like a drum in his chest. Every fiber of his being urged him to act, to uncover the truth of why fate had placed Lyra back in his path. And yet he could not, at least not openly. The court, the politics, the fragile peace between kingdoms, all demanded restraint. By midnight, the palace had emptied. The moon shone high, and Kaelin found himself in the garden once more, drawn to the place where silver leaves shimmered in the wind. He waited, as he had the night before, his powerful form blending with the shadows. Lyra appeared quietly, her steps careful. Her heart thrummed in her chest. The memory of Kaelin's gaze had haunted her all day, and she knew, with certainty, that the pull between them was real. She approached slowly, allowing the moonlight to illuminate her figure but keeping her expression calm, neutral. Kaelin turned as she entered. The air between them was charged, heavy with words unspoken and feelings that dared not surface. "You came again," he said, his voice low and steady, though the edges trembled. "I had to," Lyra replied softly. I cannot ignore this, Kaelin." "Neither can you." He studied her face, searching for hidden meaning. "You are right," he admitted. "I do not understand it, yet my heart recognizes you, and I am tormented by it." Lyra felt a shiver run through her. She had expected anger or coldness, but not this raw honesty. He was the feared giant Lycan king, yet here he was, vulnerable in the moonlight. She stepped closer, the wind carrying the scent of the forest around them. "We cannot deny what is," she whispered. Kaelin's eyes softened for the briefest moment. "And yet we must," he said, his voice edged with pain. "There are threats I cannot ignore. I am bound to my kingdom, to my curse. You are not safe if I act on what I feel." Lyra tilted her head, courage swelling in her chest. "I do not fear you, Kaelin. I fear the world around us, the secrets we cannot control, but I do not fear you." He exhaled slowly, a low growl of frustration slipping from his lips. "It is not the world I fear," he said. "It is myself. The monster within me, the one bound by the full moon, by the curse of my bloodline. It will destroy anyone who comes too close if I am not careful." Lyra reached out, her hand brushing his. The contact was electric, yet gentle. "Then let me help you," she said. "I will not turn away, not now, not ever." Kaelin's heart thundered. He wanted to pull her close, to let the walls he had built around himself crumble, but he restrained himself. The night was still, and the shadows of the forest seemed to echo a warning. Their reunion was dangerous, and he could not ignore the whispers of the wind that spoke of threats lurking unseen. Before he could reply, a rustle in the bushes snapped both of them to attention. Kaelin's eyes narrowed, glowing faintly golden in the moonlight. His claws flexed, ready for any danger. Lyra's hand stayed in his, grounding him, reminding him of the fragile connection they shared. A figure emerged from the shadows, a scout, breathless, with news that sent a chill through Kaelin's spine. "My king," the scout said, bowing. "A rival faction has moved near the borders of the forest. They speak of the king's curse and the bride who may hold the key to it." Kaelin's jaw tightened. "They know," he whispered, more to himself than to the scout. Lyra's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" she asked, tension threading her voice. "The curse," Kaelin said, his gaze turning to the silver-lit forest. "It is tied to my bloodline, and now somehow you are entangled in it. You were always connected to me. I did not understand it before, but now the threads of fate are pulling us together, and danger follows." Lyra's heart raced. She had always known there was more to Kaelin than the legends, more to their history than anyone could understand. But now, facing the truth, the weight of their destiny pressed on her. "Then we face it together," she said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Kaelin looked at her, feeling both fear and admiration. Few had ever spoken to him with such certainty, such courage. Most trembled before his power. Yet Lyra met him not with fear but with resolve. It unsettled him and inspired him all at once. The night stretched, and they walked together through the garden, shadows dancing around them. Kaelin spoke of the past, of the brief time they had shared long ago, of promises broken and regrets carried silently. Lyra listened, her hand still in his, her heart aching with the knowledge that they had been kept apart by forces beyond their control. "I should not feel this," Kaelin admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I should guard my heart, I should protect the kingdom, but I cannot. Every fiber of my being recognizes you. You belong to the same thread of fate that binds me." Lyra's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Then let us not fight it," she said. "Let us at least see where this path leads, even if the world demands we walk carefully." A sudden howl broke the fragile calm, echoing across the forest. Kaelin stiffened instantly, eyes scanning the shadows. Lyra felt a thrill of fear but also of trust. He was not just the king, he was a protector, a force of nature, ready to face whatever threatened them. "They are coming," Kaelin murmured. "And we have no choice but to meet them." In the shadows of the garden, shapes moved, figures masked by darkness, whispering threats that only Kaelin's golden eyes could pierce. He stepped in front of Lyra, positioning himself as a shield, yet not just for her safety but for the fragile hope that had begun to bloom between them. Lyra's hand remained in his, grounding him. "We are stronger together," she whispered. Kaelin's heart tightened. She was right. Alone, they would be vulnerable. Together, their strength was magnified, their courage intertwined. Yet he knew the danger that awaited them was unlike anything they had faced before. The rival faction sought not only his throne, but the very secret of his curse, and Lyra, unknowingly, was part of it. The wind stirred, carrying a faint, chilling laughter. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, anticipating the confrontation. Kaelin tightened his claws, golden eyes flashing with determination. "Stay close," he ordered softly yet firmly. "Whatever comes, we face it as one." Lyra nodded, her resolve firm. She had seen the depths of Kaelin's power, but she had also seen the man beneath, the heart that longed for connection, the soul that bore centuries of pain. And she would not let fear separate them again. The night pressed on, thick with tension, danger, and unspoken desire. As the moon climbed higher, its light reflecting on the palace and forest beyond, Kaelin and Lyra prepared for what was coming, an enemy unseen, a threat that would test both their courage and the fragile bond forming between them. And as they waited in the silvered shadows, neither spoke the words that trembled on their lips, words of longing, of recognition, of love. They did not need to. The air itself carried the truth. They were bound together by fate, by history, by the unstoppable force of hearts reunited under the moon. But just as the first rustle of movement reached them from the forest edge, a cold realization struck Kaelin. The danger was closer than he imagined. The rival Lycan faction had found their path, and their intentions were far darker than anyone could have anticipated. Kalen's eyes blazed golden and fierce. "We will not fall," he vowed. "Not tonight, not ever." Lyra squeezed his hand, her own resolve reflecting his. "Then we fight," she said softly, "together." The forest around them held its breath. The moonlight glimmered off the leaves. And somewhere in the shadows, an enemy waited, patient, silent, and deadly. The night had only just begun. The sun rose pale and uncertain over Navarra, its light struggling to pierce the dense forest surrounding the palace. Shadows lingered even in daylight, twisting along the marble walls, as if the world itself still remembered the night that had passed. Kalen stood atop the tallest tower, looking out over his kingdom, his massive frame tense with anticipation. The previous night's encounter with Lyra had left his mind racing, his heart caught between desire and duty, and now, new dangers stirred in the unseen corners of the land. Lyra moved quietly through the palace corridors, her thoughts heavy. She had seen the fear and longing in Kalen's eyes, but she also sensed something more, an old wound, a secret he carried like a blade against his own heart. Their connection was undeniable, yet fragile. Every glance, every touch, was charged with the weight of history neither had fully understood. And now, a threat loomed that would force both of them to confront the truths they had avoided. The rival Lycan faction had grown bolder. Scouts reported movements near the borders of the cursed forest, whispers of plans to seize Kalen's throne and exploit the power of his bloodline. Among them was a Lycan named Draven, ruthless and cunning, who coveted Kalen's strength and the secrets bound to the royal curse. But Draven's interest extended beyond power. He sought to manipulate the prophecy that connected Kalen and Lyra, a prophecy hidden in the stories of old, spoken only in hushed tones. Kalen gathered his most trusted advisors in the war room, the table large enough to hold maps and strategies for the entire kingdom. Yet even as he laid out plans to fortify the borders, his thoughts drifted to Lyra. She was no longer merely a bride by arrangement. She was a part of the fate he could not ignore, tied to the same forces that cursed him, bound by threads of destiny older than their lifetimes. "You must remain cautious," Kalen warned, his voice deep and commanding. "This faction knows more than we imagine, and they are closer than the palace walls can protect us." One of the advisors, an older Lycan with silver streaks in his fur, nodded gravely. "They are dangerous, my king, but your strength is unmatched." "We can hold the palace if you guide us." Kalen's jaw tightened. "It is not strength alone that matters," he said. "It is understanding. And there is something they are hunting, something hidden within the girl who stands by my side." His eyes flicked to the window, to where Lyra might be watching, listening, unknowingly caught in the threads of destiny. Lyra herself had been exploring the old library when a hidden journal fell into her hands. Its pages spoke of the prophecy, words that chilled her with recognition. Her family had always been connected to the fate of Navarra, to the curse that bound Kalen and his ancestors. It was no coincidence that she had returned, veiled as a bride, to this kingdom. She traced the letters with trembling fingers, realizing the weight of her own bloodline, and the danger it brought into the life of the man she had loved and lost. The sun dipped below the horizon and the palace once again fell under the embrace of moonlight. Kalen found Lyra in the gardens, the journal clutched tightly in her hands. Her eyes met his, wide and searching. "You've seen it," he said softly, stepping closer. "The prophecy." Lyra nodded, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. "I know now. My family, it was always connected, and now it seems the world expects us to fulfill it." Kalen exhaled slowly, his golden eyes reflecting the silver light of the moon. "It is not just the prophecy," he said. "It is the danger that comes with it. The rival Lycans, Draven, they will not hesitate to use what they know to destroy us." Lyra felt a shiver of resolve run through her. "Then we must not let them. Whatever it takes, we stand together." Kaelin studied her for a long moment, weighing the truth in her words against the storm raging within him. "You do not understand what you are asking," he said, voice low. "To stand beside me is to face death, betrayal, and the darkest forces this world has ever known." "I understand more than you think," Lyra replied, her hand brushing against his. "I have lived in the shadows of my family's secrets, in the spaces between power and fear. I am not afraid of the truth, Kaelin, and I am not afraid of you." For the first time, Kaelin allowed himself to lower the walls he had built over centuries. He stepped closer, close enough that the moonlight kissed their faces. "Then you are braver than anyone I have ever known," he murmured, a mixture of admiration and longing threading his words. Their moment was broken by a distant howl, sharp and chilling, echoing through the forest. Kaelin stiffened, his body reacting instinctively. Lyra sensed the shift, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. "They are moving," Kaelin said, voice hardening. "Draven's faction approaches. They will try to strike before the prophecy is fulfilled. And if they succeed—" His words trailed off, unspoken but understood. Failure was not an option. Together, they moved through the palace corridors, preparing for the threat. Guards were stationed along walls, wards were activated in secret chambers, and allies gathered in the shadows. Every step was deliberate, every motion measured. Kaelin's presence was a force of nature, commanding and protective, while Lyra's resolve burned bright beside him. As night deepened, the first attack came. Figures cloaked in shadow struck from the forest edge, swift and silent. Kaelin's claws gleamed in the moonlight as he intercepted them, moving with terrifying speed and precision. Lyra, though untrained in combat, used her knowledge of the palace and the terrain to guide the defenders, positioning them to defend key points. Together, they moved as one, king and bride, united by fate, tested by danger. The battle was fierce but brief. Kaelin's strength and Lyra's insight repelled the initial wave, leaving the attackers retreating into the forest. Yet Kaelin knew it was only the beginning. Draven would not give up so easily. After the skirmish, Kaelin and Lyra retreated to the high tower overlooking the forest. They stood side by side, silent, listening to the wind rustle through the trees. Kaelin's hands were clenched, his body still taut with the remnants of battle. Lyra reached out, resting her hand lightly on his arm. "You saved them," she said softly, "and you saved me." Kaelin's gaze met hers, a storm of emotion swirling in his golden eyes. "I will always protect you," he said, "no matter the cost, no matter the darkness that comes." Lyra's breath caught. She had seen his power, yes, but she had also seen the man beneath, the heart that longed for connection, the soul that bore centuries of pain. And she realized then that the bond between them was not merely fate, it was choice, courage, and trust. The night stretched on, and the stars blinked silently above. Yet beneath the calm surface, threats still moved unseen. Kaelin knew that Draven would strike again, that the prophecy would demand their courage and sacrifice. And he knew, too, that his heart would be tested in ways he had never imagined. Days passed, and the tension in the palace grew. Courtiers whispered, alliances shifted, and the shadow of Draven's ambition spread like a storm cloud. Kaelin and Lyra trained, strategized, and prepared, their connection deepening with each passing moment. Every glance, every word, every touch carried unspoken meanings, building a bond that neither could ignore. One evening, as the moon rose high and the palace lay quiet, Kaelin led Lyra to a secluded chamber he rarely visited. Ancient tapestries hung along the walls, depicting the history of his ancestors and the bloodline curse that had shaped their lives. "You must understand," Kaelin said, voice low and reverent, "the curse is not merely a legend. It is real, and it is tied to our blood, to the choices we make, and to the fate of this kingdom." Lyra's eyes widened as she traced the images. "Then the prophecy, it is not just words, it is our reality." "Yes," Kaelin said, stepping closer, "and it is dangerous, Every choice we make, every action carries consequences that cannot be undone. That is why I must know that you are willing, Lyra. Willing to face what comes, to stand by me, even when the shadows grow darkest. Lyra's hand found his, gripping firmly. I am willing, she said, voice steady. I will not turn away, not from you, not from what we must face. A silence followed, heavy and full of meaning. Outside, the wind stirred through the forest, carrying the promise of challenges yet to come. Kaelin's heart, usually guarded, beat with a fierce intensity. For the first time in centuries, he felt hope, tempered by caution, anchored in the presence of the woman he had never forgotten. But even as they stood together, a shadow moved beyond the palace walls. A scout, watching, reporting, waiting. Draven's plan was already in motion, and the true test of Kaelin and Lyra's bond was yet to come. The danger was closer than they realized, and the prophecy's threads were tightening, drawing them inexorably toward a confrontation that would test both their courage and their hearts. Kaelin's gaze fell on Lyra, golden eyes reflecting the moonlight and the fierce determination in hers. Whatever comes, he murmured, we face it together. You and I. Lyra nodded, gripping his hand. Together, she agreed. And in the silver glow of the moon, with the forest whispering secrets and shadows creeping closer, they knew that the battle was not just for the kingdom, but for each other, for love, for destiny, and for the fragile hope that even in darkness they could find light. The night was far from over. The night had arrived with a quiet menace, the moon high and full over the kingdom of Navarra. Its silver light bathed the palace in a ghostly glow, and the forest surrounding the walls seemed alive, whispering secrets carried on the wind. Kaelin, the giant Lycan king, stood at the highest balcony, his golden eyes scanning the dark horizon. Tonight, the final challenge had come. Draven, the rival Lycan, and his faction had gathered forces near the palace, their intentions clear. They sought the secrets of Kaelin's bloodline and the prophecy that entwined him with Lyra. Kaelin's jaw tightened as he felt the weight of responsibility. This was not merely a battle for the throne. It was a test of his very soul, the culmination of fate, courage, and the love he had fought to protect. Lyra stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She had spent the days leading up to this night learning all she could, preparing herself to stand by him. Her knowledge of the prophecy, combined with her courage, made her a true partner in this struggle. Together they were stronger than either could be alone, their bond tested by time, danger, and the shadows of the past. Kaelin turned to her, his voice low and firm. Tonight we face more than enemies. We face what the curse has always threatened, but I will not fail you. Not you, not our kingdom. Lyra's eyes met his, unwavering. I trust you, Kaelin, and I am not afraid. Their words carried weight, binding them together as the moon climbed higher. The palace gates opened, and the sound of approaching Lycans echoed through the courtyard. Draven himself stepped forward, his form taller and leaner than most, eyes gleaming with ambition and malice. You should not have returned, Draven said, voice sharp and mocking. Kaelin, your reign is weakening, and your bride holds secrets that could destroy you both. Kaelin stepped forward, towering and fierce. You are wrong, Draven. My bride does not weaken me, she strengthens me, and tonight your ambition will fail. Draven sneered, and with a sudden motion his forces advanced. The first wave of attackers moved swiftly, shadows among the moonlit trees. Kaelin's claws gleamed, and in an instant he leapt into the fray, a blur of strength and precision. Each strike was calculated, each movement a shield for the kingdom and for Lyra. Lyra moved with him, guiding the defenders, her voice clear and commanding. Though she wielded no weapon, her knowledge of the palace and the forest allowed her to direct the battle, ensuring the attackers met resistance at every turn. Together they moved as one, a perfect balance of power and strategy. The battle raged beneath the silver moon. Lycan claws clashed, the ground shook with the force of Kaelin's might, and the night air was filled with the sounds of combat. Yet even amid the chaos, Kaelin's eyes never left Lyra. She was his anchor, his reason to hold back the full fury of the curse that roared within him. Draven, realizing that brute force alone would not win, stepped forward to confront Kaelin directly. The two Lycan leaders faced each other, the tension between them palpable, the air thick with power. "You should have stayed hidden," Draven hissed, claws raised. "You cannot escape your destiny or the curse that binds you." Kaelin's golden eyes flared. "The curse is not my enemy," he said, voice low and steady. "It is a part of me, but it does not define me. I define myself, and I protect what I love." Lyra stepped forward, standing beside Kaelin. "You will not harm him," she said firmly, her voice carrying through the night. "Not while I stand here." Draven's eyes flicked to her, recognition and surprise flashing briefly. He had underestimated her courage, her connection to the prophecy, and her unyielding resolve. Kaelin lunged, and the confrontation erupted. Draven's strikes were swift and deadly, but Kaelin's strength, tempered by his care for Lyra, was unmatched. Every attack was precise, every movement protective. And Lyra, guiding their allies, ensured no flank was left exposed. As the battle reached its peak, Kaelin felt the familiar pull of his curse. The full moon above demanded transformation, and he could feel the beast within him stir. His body ached with the power that surged through his veins, a power that could save or destroy. He looked at Lyra, at the woman who had returned to him, who had never left his heart, and he made a choice. He would control the curse, not let it control him. He would channel the power not for destruction, but for protection, for love, and for redemption. A roar split the night as Kaelin embraced the energy of his curse, golden eyes glowing brighter, claws sharper, but his movements controlled and deliberate. Draven recoiled, realizing the beast was not the enemy, Kaelin's will was. Lyra's voice rang out, guiding the defenders, reinforcing their courage. "Hold your ground, trust him." With coordinated precision, Kaelin and Lyra's forces turned the tide. Draven's faction, though fierce, could not withstand the combination of Kaelin's strength, Lyra's strategy, and the determination of those who followed them. Slowly, inexorably, the attackers were driven back, retreating into the dark forest from which they had come. Draven himself was forced to fall back, his eyes blazing with fury and frustration. "This is not over, Kaelin," he shouted, disappearing into the shadows. Kaelin exhaled deeply, his body still thrumming with the remnants of the curse's energy. Lyra moved to his side, her hand resting on his arm. "You controlled it," she said softly. "You faced it, and you did not lose yourself." Kaelin turned to her, golden eyes meeting hers, emotion raw and unguarded. "I could not lose you," he admitted. "Not now, not ever. You are my anchor, Lyra, my heart, and this kingdom, our future, depends on us standing together." Lyra's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Then we stand together," she whispered. "Through every shadow, every trial, every danger, together." The night air was still once more, the echoes of battle fading into silence. The moonlight touched the palace, casting silver on stone and leaf, illuminating the promise of a new dawn. Kaelin and Lyra stood on the balcony, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in unison. The kingdom was safe for now, but Kaelin knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges. The prophecy was not merely words, it was a test, one that demanded courage, trust, and love. And Kaelin was ready to face it, strengthened not only by his own power, but by the woman who had returned to him, who had never truly left his heart. In the quiet that followed, Kaelin spoke, voice low and reverent. "I thought I had lost you once," he said. "I thought the world had taken you from me, but here you are, and I will never let that happen again." Lyra smiled softly, her hand brushing against his cheek. "We have been given a second chance," she said. "A chance to rewrite our story, to face the darkness together, and to find light where there was only shadow before." Kaelin leaned close, the moonlight glinting off his golden eyes. "Then we begin anew," he murmured. "Together always." As they stood there, the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon. The forest below shimmered with silver and gold, the palace bathed in soft light. The kingdom had endured, the prophecy had not yet been fulfilled, and yet a sense of peace settled over the land. Kaelin and Lyra's bond had been forged in the fires of danger, tempered by courage and sealed with trust. And though shadows still lingered, waiting for their next opportunity, Kaelin and Lyra knew that they could face whatever came. Their love, their courage, and their unbreakable connection were stronger than any threat, more enduring than any curse. They would rise together, not only as king and bride, but as partners in destiny, guardians of the kingdom and champions of the hope that even in darkness, hearts could find redemption. Kaelin looked at Lyra, a fierce and tender expression on his face. "No matter what comes next," he said, "we are unstoppable together." Lyra's eyes shone with determination. "Together," she echoed, and for the first time in centuries, Kaelin allowed himself to believe that the shadows could be faced and conquered without losing the light within them. The night faded, and the kingdom of Navarra awoke to a new day. But in the hearts of its king and his bride, a story had been completed, one of reunion, courage, and love that had triumphed over darkness. And though the prophecy still whispered of challenges to come, Kaelin and Lyra had proven that together they could meet destiny head-on, stronger than any curse, braver than any fear, and bound by a love that even time could not undo. The moon, now setting, cast a final silver glow over the palace, as if blessing the bond between the Lycan king and the woman who had returned to him. They had fought, they had loved, and they had survived. And for Kaelin and Lyra, the dawn marked not just the end of a night, but the beginning of a life together. A life forged in courage, tempered by trials, and sealed with a love eternal.